Um, Thanks for having me. It's kind of funny for me to be here in this capacity. I think that I'm probably eminently more qualified to talk about other creative things, and even though I bill myself as a wondernaut, it's just, I think anybody could do that really, and anyone probably should if they're interested in, if they're curious about stuff. But there's a kind of a specific reason, I think, for me, and so it was really fun when I got the email from Jeremy, who said, "Hey, do you want to give this talk? And the subject is on wonder," and I was like, "That's bizarre and cool." So, because I've actually spoken about this a few times, and I think, I'll kind of start a little bit with the history of my experience with wonder and why it's important to me and why I kind of believe in it and why I like to talk about it. The wonder's a funny word because you can wonder about a lot of things. We use it all the time. You can wonder about, it has like a spectrum, if you will. You can wonder about whether an avocado is ripe, and that's actually, I mean, I don't want to downplay that one because it's actually it's pretty amazing when you get the right one. You're like, whoa. but I want to talk about sort of a bigger form of wonder, and one that sort of that really is almost hard to explain. It really connects to you emotionally. It's actually, and it's really kind of connected to the energy of learning and who we are as human beings, I think, and maybe a lot more stuff than that. So, is this working? It was actually probably about, not that long ago, probably about 6 years ago, that I randomly bought a telescope. It might have been just something that like popped up on whatever, like a, some modern appliance or furniture store thing. I was like, oh, I should get one of those. But it wasn't like I was actually looking to get a telescope and check out space. I've always kind of liked space a little bit, but I bought that and I set it up, and it was really kind of nice because my brother was in town at the time, and so we got to kind of set it up as almost like being a kid, and we don't follow the instructions. We just kind of haphazardly throw things together. I don't know how to operate it. I'm just kind of like pointing it in the sky rather than doing all the math that you actually have to do when you really calibrate those things. And by the way, if you know anything about telescopes, if you don't calibrate them and you're just pounding it's even hard to find the moon through a telescope when it's just right there. It's like when you move it like a millimeter, it's actually going like 70 million miles one direction in reality. So, but I knew enough to kind of look up and see some things that were really curious to me, that were really interesting, and it started with like a little bit of a dot in the sky that I focused in, and when I finally got into focus, I saw that, and I was like, whoops, that. And that's just a little weird speck, but that's Saturn. Not this kind of Saturn you see when you're watching National Geographic or you open up a magazine. It's like this giant, colorful, crazy thing. But it's that little tiny, blurry, but incredibly recognizable, iconic planet. It's like kind of the rock star of planets, the one you've grown up with. And it's the feeling of capturing that and seeing that for the first time, like in person, and I guess through telescopes in person, but it really started to affect me in ways that it was like, this is really bizarre. And I wanted to share it with everybody, and I showed it with my brother, and we were freaking out. Right next to it, again, like 78 million miles away, was this. And that's Jupiter. And that's about how it looks. You could actually see it about like that if you had binoculars right now. So this isn't like a giant, powerful telescope. This is just like maybe a little bit better than our own eyes, but a lot better than my eyes, but maybe a little bit better than someone's eyes. I think right now, if you look at the right time of the night, you can actually see 4 of the moons of Jupiter right now at this very time. And I would encourage you that you try it because it's really cool. So this is like kind of like the thing that really got me going, and I had this moment where a lot of thoughts went through my head. The one thing that I noticed right away was I felt pretty small and really insignificant, and not in a way that's uncomfortable, but in a way that sort of to stack all of my earthly concerns in appropriate boxes. And at the time, and I probably feel still this way, but it was worse then. There was a lot of things that I was worried about, as you can imagine. I think it was like 2016. So things started to feel right in the right way, and the things that I was wondering about were much bigger than anything that was kind of around me, and that's a pretty cool and interesting feeling. That kind of set me off on this journey to sort of discover what wonder was, and to learn about it and really kind of share it and talk to people about it and where they can find it and why. So as you can tell, my wonder is the wonder from space. And there's lots of different forms of wonder in the world, as we talked about, and even wonder that kind of is emotionally compelling, that can take you to that space of awe. But the reason I think the wonder from space is incredibly significant is because it's of what I believe its role is in humanity, and its accessibility, really. You know, you can get a sense of wonder from going to the Grand Canyon, but not everyone can go to the Grand Canyon. And all of us can kind of go outside and look up at the stars if we take a moment to do it. So that's one of the super compelling facts to me. The other thing that's really cool is that if you walk around, go anywhere in the world, and you talk to some people and you ask them a question, have you ever gone outside and seen the stars at night? You know, they'll be like, yeah. And if you follow that question up with, well, can you remember how that felt? Almost everybody will give you some version of what I just talked about, that feeling of insignificance. And as someone that's built brands for a long time, I kind of was like, okay, I've tapped into something really interesting here, because when you can find a universal truth and a human connection that is global, that everybody can relate to in every different culture, that's pretty cool. So that's one of the reasons that I think that space is probably the most powerful form of wonder, because it's the most universal to us all. It's the one thing that really kind of connects us, and it connects us to that feeling that we sometimes can't describe. And rather than describe it, I'm gonna actually play something for you that I put together. Who saw the eclipse like 2 summers ago? And then. Who actually saw it in totality versus, cool. I don't want to be an eclipse snob, but I kind of am. Because the difference between seeing 99% of the eclipse and 100% is 100%. It's actually impossible to describe what that difference is. But it actually just turns people into jelly. They melt down. And so rather than kind of describe wonder, I was lucky to experience the eclipse, and I put together like a interesting sort of soundbite that basically follows the journey of the eclipse across the United States. So you're going to hear weird accents from all different places, and that's pretty cool too, because all of these people were experiencing the same thing. So let me see if it works. Can you guys hear it? Do I have to do this?
Yeah! Look at it! Oh my God! Wow! 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 Oh my God! Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Oh my God! Look at that! Take your glasses off! Take your glasses off! Oh, look at that! Look at that! Oh my God! Take it off! Oh my God! Wow! That's amazing!
It's a circle. Oh my God, how cool!
Look at Bailey's beads! Wow! Look at that, Bailey! Wow!
This is so big, I'm literally shaking.
I've never had such big goosebumps in my life.
So you guys kind of get it now. I mean, That's much more eloquent than I could ever talk about, really, in terms of wonder. So I'll try to kind of get into some of the points I wanted to make, and I'm doing this differently than I've ever done it before. I'm just kind of talking to you guys. I'm not going through my, I've talked about this a few times, and I usually have a little bit, it's a little more formal, but I was like, oh, it's Creative Mornings, so I can just kind of just chill out and just do my thing and meander a little bit. No one will care, but hopefully that's okay. But the point is that if you've ever experienced this, I like to describe it as if you wander out from the city and you see those stars, you first just kind of recognize them as beautiful, but suddenly they just kind of captivate you, and they have the gravity that pulls your head up to the sky. And it's really only at the moment when you start to stare at them when you realize that they're not just beautiful, bright, luminous objects, but something that is really far away. And the best part, that happened a really long time ago. And that's like, you're like, how could I be seeing something that happened that long ago? So when I think about that moment there and just kind of looking at the stars at night, where my wonder takes me actually is this thought process that is, what was it like before we had language, before we even had houses or civilizations, and without a roof over our head, the roof we had over our head were the stars at night. And that's, for anyone that's experienced what that is, just like on a camping weekend, that's pretty intense. And there's a lot of evidence that our science comes directly from wondering about the stars. There's been like baboon legs that sort of been discovered that are almost 1 million years old, that have hash marks in it, where people they're tracking the phases of the moon. There's tons of buildings, and math and science actually comes really from the stars, and it's that we have this desire to solve things, and the stars are something that we just can't. It's too big for us. So I really think that when you look around and think about the stars, if you take it back to that level, they're kind of responsible for art and science and almost everything that we've ever made in human history. So it's a pretty cool thing, and when you can see it every day when you the best example is just children. I don't personally have children, but I was one, and I've seen a few, and when they are brand new, they're a really good example of our human connection to wonder. And actually, they're a really good reminder of what we need to do as adults, because all they're trying to do is solve things. And a table, to them, looks like a spaceship. It looks like something they've never seen before, and so they're just staring at it and trying to solve those problems, and they're wondering about everything. And as we become older in life, we know what a table is, and we know what almost everything is, and we kind of get to a place where maybe we get out of school and we get used to being very comfortable not wondering about things. And that's, I think, a problem. And that's actually when it comes down to creativity and a lot of other things that are important to us as human beings. So the other part of that is that wonder actually tends to be good for us. There's studies there's not many studies on wonder, by the way. It's like the least studied emotion. I think probably because there's not a lot of money behind it, but I'm not sure. There's a lot more money in love than there is wonder. But the studies that have been done, prove that the people that experience these moments of awe, I think a really good example might be the eclipse, have a lot of really pro-social behaviors, and they are more empathetic, they're more generous. And these all seem like pretty good things to me. But I think that a lot of that is just comes from that sort of restacking of the order of things that you experience when you are wondering. Going back to the the bit about science and the significance of wonder and creativity, I have this thing that I sometimes talk about, because I usually have to speak to like engineers and stuff about about wonder. It's a little bit of a different audience, and so. But this is something that I thought about that I think is really true, and it's science knows because creativity wonders, and the biggest thinkers, scientific thinkers that we've ever had, are also tend to be the most creative, and Einstein, solved a lot of amazing problems because he had really good questions first. And so I think that wonder is one of those things that we need to lean on and keep that part of our lives, and so we can continue to progress and solve problems in new ways. So I think that you're kind of like going, okay, that's cool, but what do I do? And that's fine. I can't really tell you everything. I can definitely tell you that you won't find it here by me talking, and you definitely won't find it when you open a page and see a beautiful photograph of Saturn. It's actually something you have to go out and experience. Sometimes people say, well, if I look at the stars and what if nothing happens? I don't think that usually is the case, but sometimes people have concerns, and so, I mean, I think that you can take a little science with you can take a little facts with you, but I think most of us realize that when you start looking at those things, your mind will take you to places. I had this weird thought the other day, and when I was looking at stars, and this is kind of a weird segue, but I guess it tells you where your mind goes a little bit. But when you look at a star, and I wonder what sort of pulls us to that. Does everyone know like what's the major element in a star? You must. Well, it's hydrogen, and it's about two-thirds of a star is made from hydrogen, and it just so happens that like the human body is about two-thirds hydrogen as well, and sort of our sort of atomic makeup, which is. Usually don't think of yourselves in that way, but I guess you do when you're looking at stars. And so I started to think, and this is just a complete insane thought, but these are the kind of thoughts that I like. I was like, it's actually possible if you think about the Big Bang and how the universe expanded and accelerated, and if it was all one tiny, super dense, crazy thing, a billion years ago, it's possible that one of those atoms that's creating the photon of light that's hitting you right now might have been right next to an atom that's in your body. And that's just a weird thought, but like that's the kind of stuff that I think that you get to when you're having those moments, and those are not necessarily applicable to anything you're going to do today, but I think that they actually energize your mind in a good way. And so I think the last point to what do you do with it is this. I think that a lot of us spend a lot of time working out, doing physical fitness, and then some of us even spend time doing mindfulness. Those are all really, really good things. And I look at going out and finding wonder as a little bit of a different thing, and that's more, I kind of call it metaphysical fitness. And it's not, I think that we don't practice enough metaphysical fitness, and that's a really simple way to do it. And I do think it matters because I think it is the thing that reconnects us to who we were as children, and it connects us. And wonder is simply the energy of learning, and it's the thing that drives our curiosity, and it's the thing that makes us creative. And I think that we're all creative, and no matter what profession you're in, it's the way you solve problems is through creativity. And why wouldn't you want to make that as powerful as it is? So I'm kind of, that's kind of where it ends for me in terms of this presentation or talk, but that's because mostly I want to have conversations. If you guys want to talk about anything, I think that would be even more fun, because aside from coming up with a weird concept, the best part of creativity and wonder is what happens outside of your minds when you're talking to people and talking about weird stuff. So that's it for now, unless someone has a question.
Here, speaking to this.
All righty. Talking to a ball. Hello.
That's such good technology.
New experience. I wonder about this.
Yeah.
Do you have daily exercises that you do to find the wonder, to just generate that?
Not daily. I mean, I don't do anything daily except wake up, to be honest with you. But I do make a point of doing it probably at least once a month. It's harder in the winter, to be honest with you, here, because you know, if you're going to go out and look at the stars. But I'm not. Because I use that as sort of my source of inspiration, because it just is so. It's so much easier and so powerful to kind of get in that place. But I think that I think everybody here probably is naturally curious anyways. So it's kind of funny for me to speak to this group. I mean, we can always be more like curious and wonder more, but I'm actually kind of speaking to, it's like kind of cooking to chefs, you know? You know, you guys kind of know why curiosity is important. You know, sometimes I talk to people and they're like, oh, that's weird. What does it add up to? So, that, you know, but I don't do it every day, no. So I can't tell you I have a special regimen, so.
Hello. Can you guys hear me? Okay. It's weird because you feel like you're not actually talking into the microphone. So my question is, obviously you're speaking to all of us that feel the same way as you, because we're all creatives in this room. But have you found a good way to be able to bring wonder into your clients' minds, like while you're going through strategy or branding, in any workshop format or?
You know, I haven't actually tried to blend those two things, to be honest with you. Maybe I should. I kind of have kept them separate for a reason. I think that what I like to, all the time I've spent in exploration and wonder has been a nice separation from my professional life. So I haven't tried that actually. Yeah.
Throw it to you.
Wow, it really works.
Wow,
It's a
it's
game.
kind of
super
stressful,
cool.
actually. I don't know. I'm like,
I'm a
people
little
have
bit-
coffee. I'm not that coordinated this early.
I empathize.
Yeah, thank you. So my question, see, I feel like I'm yelling. You're right. It's a weird dynamic. I'm also from New York and loud, so that's probably why. But my question is, I find that I do wonder, maybe not with the stars, but with smaller things. And I wonder, and I say it out loud, and then someone's like, well, let me Google it right now and figure out the answer. And so, and I'm like, oh, you just sapped my creative mind from wandering to being like, well, Google says it's 3 times this or something, right? So
Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering, obviously you know a lot about stars now, to what
Sort of,
degree?
yeah.
Yeah, like to what degree are you just taking what you're looking at and learning from it, and then actually going back and doing that research or figuring out the answers to what you might be looking at?
Well, it's really interesting because I think that, first of all, the first part of that is you can't Google anything that you're looking at and what you're feeling. And that's why it's actually important. And that's why it's like actually getting out there and doing that and having that feeling is really crucial, because it's a slightly different thing. But the second part of that is that maybe this is where there's some value in my experiences, is I just started reading really weird stuff, you know, stuff I can't sometimes comprehend. And it really kind of put me on a journey. I've had I started a nonprofit called Look Up, and that made me go sit down with, you know, engineers that are building satellites and rocket ships and things like that, and have like really interesting conversations. And so I started reading a lot of stuff that was way outside of anything that I would have ever before. But I felt like it was connected to what I was doing. It wasn't just like, I'm just going to like educate. It was like, I just wanted to know. And I think that's that's like kind of finding your Peter Pan again in a different way. You know, like connecting with who you are, you know, inside is that energy.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna do. Okay. I'm gonna underhand. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm kind of worried about the wood blocks too. Should I be?
Yeah, but I was afraid about the people around. Okay, I'm a physicist, so I can really relate to the sense of wonder about science and these type of things. But I can also see that a lot of scientists, they have this feeling, but that they don't communicate it, and people think if they don't feel it themselves, they think science is boring and they don't want to get into physics or math. So if you have to have one piece of advice of how can we communicate this wonder to people, how can we transmit these feelings so we can also, as a scientist, better communicate what we...
I think that that's a good insight there, and another thing that I do because of maybe this stuff and being someone that is supposed to like help people communicate is I work with the DRAC Institute, which is at University of Washington. It's data intensive research in astrophysics and cosmology. It's hard to say and really hard to think about and put your head around. First of all, the thing that I found about the physicists there is that they are intensely creative people. And the thing that I've also found is they don't identify with that necessarily. But I think that what you just said, the word that actually can help everybody in that field, and that is feelings. Because actually you don't physics, they don't usually write about the major sort of discoveries and concepts in terms of the feelings, right? People get feelings from when they discover something massive, like when they got the three physicists got the prize for the Nobel Prize for discovering that the universe and proving that the universe was accelerating. That makes people feel crazy. Like, whoa, like that's a sense of wonder just from somebody talking about it. But they actually didn't come in and go, like, dudes, I'm gonna blow your mind. This thing feels awesome, check it out. So somewhere in between that and there has to be a slightly different way to talk about it, maybe. I can't say that the profession needs to change. I just think that maybe they need to, like, find a different way to sort of tap into some of it in a lighter sense, maybe in the cliff notes of it.
Thank you.
So you mentioned wonder from the sky, and I think many of us do experience that, or a sense of wonder from different parts of nature. But I'm also curious, do you have kids? Because one source of wonder for me, in addition, is also my small children learning to do things for the first time, or like my 1-year-old, his favorite thing right now is waving, and it just brings me joy every time. There's kind of that sense of wonder, like, how did you learn to wave? I wasn't trying to teach you to wave, like that sort of thing. So.
I don't have kids, but I think you're 100% right. I think that the wonder you get around children and witnessing them sort of it can almost be equivalent. It's just it's a slightly different thing, you can't, the difference being, there is mystery in how children learn, and that's because I think that the really big forms of wonder are the ones you just actually can't explain. You can kind of like go, well, we know that this is happening, but you don't really know what's going on in their heads and all of that, and that's what kind of makes it fascinating to watch them sort of do the things that they do. So I think that you're right in that sense.
It's all connected to like empathizing with them and having that moment of connection and wonder.
Yeah, but it's also exactly what I would hope you would become if you saw the stars at night, in a certain sense, more like them, So.
Oh, I did though. Do you ever get overwhelmed by all of the questions that you ask yourself and the feelings that come along with those? Like, how do you use those feelings to propel you instead of overwhelm you?
I've never thought about it like that, actually. I mean, I believe in a culture of questions. And I think that I've never thought about, I guess I'm always overwhelmed, so that's like a normal thing. Is that not normal? So,
I guess I find myself like wondering so many things all the time, and then I get stressed out, which I'm sure is like counterproductive to like what is actually supposed to
Sounds
happen.
like you have like ADD or something.
Oh, I'm like nervous, so it totally probably sounds like I do.
No.
But yeah, I'm like, oh, I have so many questions about so many things, and I want to know them all. and explore them all, and I like get afraid that I like won't have time, but I want to use it to be productive instead of like overwhelmed.
Wow, you have like curiosity, like FOMO. It's
Yeah,
bizarre.
totally.
No, I think it's really
Or
good.
like existential crisis, like, you know.
No, I think it's actually good. I mean, it's funny you say that because I kind of have looked at what's going on in the world right now, and there's a kind of a huge division between, you know, this different societies, and it's global. You know, whether it's, you know, you call it populist or liberal, whatever. But a lot of what you see is a division between what I call question people and exclamation mark people. Question mark people generally don't have a fear of the unknown. They embrace it and they kind of look forward to it, and they're like cool with like we don't have an answer, but you know, we're going to move that direction. And then there's a lot of people in the world that just have to have an answer. Right, and it's just like if there isn't one, they make it up.
Right.
So, you know, I tend to think that well, I read some stuff not long ago, and a friend of mine actually wrote a book called A More Beautiful Question. Maybe you should just read that, and you'll feel good about yourself, because it'll be like, oh, I'm the future.
Got off easy, you didn't even have to throw that. So, I know a kid, he's not me, by the way, who used to see the whole world as a giant science experiment, and then he went to school. And wonder is not measurable on a standardized test.
Yeah.
Therefore, it is a distraction and a bad thing. And they snuffed out all sense of wonder and curiosity in this person. And what I'm wondering, how do you rekindle that fire when it's been doused for so long and given so many repercussions, so much negative feedback that the person has just dulled themselves to it?
Well, I mean, I think that hopefully I've given you one tip, and that's to spend some time outside and look, you know, but also to be open to wonder and to, you know, be aware of it, I think. But it's like I think you're tapping into a bigger issue about education, and I'm not qualified to talk about it. I can assure you, but I do believe that we do need to spend more time with wonder. The way I was kind of looking at it, and some of the efforts I've made, is I tried to, you know, join the bandwagon of getting rid of the word STEM and making it STEAM, and making sure art is involved in science, math, and engineering. But I think that people learn in different ways, and we just have to kind of figure out how to accommodate that. So I don't have a good answer other than just that you got to kind of take it on and let your mind wander and find your own like creative energy.
Who wants the mic ball?
So you talked about asking questions and being constantly curious like a child. As humans, we are inherently like impulse to create a solution in our mind already.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us an experience? I'll give you an option here of something that you've thought you had the right answer and you were just way off, or something that you've been kind of stumped on, and when you dove deeper, you were just like, wow, that guy.
So what was the end of that question? I missed that.
Something you've been stumped on.
Uh-huh.
You know, the first question was if you found something that you were right on or way off on. And then the second part, if you've been stumped on something, you're just like, I can't figure it out. How do you drive yourself further to get into the answer there?
Well, so you know, I've been, you know, worked really hard on lots of things and been wrong about a zillion things all the time, and you know, that can be frustrating, I think, for anybody. But actually, it's a little bit how you frame that, I think, because nobody won Miss Pac-Man the first time. I don't know anyone that just like ran the whole maze like, oh, it's so easy. You know, you have to be eaten by a few ghosts before you figure out how to play that game, right? And I think that what you're talking about is kind of that, just that, you know. I I mean, sometimes it feels like the consequences are greater when you're working on a giant project and you're like, oh, it's terrible, or it doesn't work, or whatever. So, but actually, I do think that that's kind of, just part of the process. Yeah, and you're right. I'm looking for a really good analogy right now, and I can't seem to find it. And I've actually been looking for it for a while, because what you're talking about is that sort of that innate sense we have as human beings that are driven to solve problems. And the great thing about the big forms of wonder is that we can't. And so that's when we open up, because there's a lot of things that we can kind of find the answer to eventually. We can wonder about them, and then we naturally want to solve it, and we do. But the stuff that's really cool to me is when your mind just hits the wall of, like, we can't do it. It's just too crazy. I feel that way when people talk about blockchain.
My question is, do you grow plants? Because I feel like that's something that we all, not everyone, but we might try to do, and then you could look it up, the exact right conditions of how it's supposed to work. And then I feel like that's my sort of sense of wonder is this going to die or not? Or is it going to turn into something else? Can I propagate it into something else? And I was wondering if that's an experience you have.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I went through a phase of like crazy plant guy, like tons of plants. And now I have 0 plants. Mostly because I'm traveling a lot, I think, and they would just die. Like I have one plant that just barely survives every time I come home. So, but I don't know. I mean, I think that if that's what you wonder about, it's perfect for you, and that anything that kind of gets you in that area is great. Some people, but just as on a side note, it's like, some people just are really good at that too. Yeah. They just kind of like they just get it.
They just look at it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna throw it. I'm really afraid.
Hi. So to your point that science knows because creativity wonders. What are some interesting ways that you've seen creatives show up in the realm of space exploration?
I don't know if I have any like really perfect examples that I won't completely botch. But a lot of the stuff that I've been around has mostly been related to sort of science, like satellite deployment and conversations around. I mean, there's now we're kind of in a place where they have like pretty standardized systems for launching satellites into space, and there's the big giant ones, and there's like they sell off all these like basically 10 by 10 cubes called CubeSats, and it's like you can just buy that space. You can actually, there's a company here in town called spaceflight.com, which is essentially the Expedia of launching stuff into space. You can actually go, oh, I've got a ball I want to put into space, and there's like 25 launches, and you can look it up right now and do that. But it's when the conversations I've had that have been interesting around creativity and really kind of cool is when you have something that's unconventional that doesn't fit in the CubeSat, and you don't have enough money to put it in the big fairing, and you have to sit down and just like, well, what if you did this, and what if you did this, and the stuff that people come up with is like really weird and cool. Like an example being trying to put something up that was fragile and enclosing it in a foam that the radiation from the sun would melt off, and then it would just be there, just sitting there on its own. That was like super like creative to me, like a really creative solution. Totally different way to think about it, and it was like really kind of fun to watch. People kind of be pushing different ways to do it, to try different things. So, but my experience there is fairly limited. But that's probably the only example I have right now.